Welcome to The Surprise Truth, where a timely insight can change your life forever. Today I have with me Ambassador Jayant Khobragade. He is the Indian Ambassador to ASEAN, and we have a very interesting conversation ahead of us. I'd like to really invite you all to subscribe to our channel and participate actively in the comments. So, Ambassador Jayant, Your Excellency, welcome to The Surprise Truth.
Good morning and namaskar. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, we'd like to get into some of the aspects of your work, as well as your hobbies, as well as the ASEAN region, in a way that it is a surprise truth for many people who may not be aware of the actual work, quantity of work that's actually going into building this relation.
Oh, excellent idea. Thank you so much.
So I'd like to start firstly with your personal journey.
Okay.
And what inspired you to be a diplomat, and also a little bit more about how you have seen that leadership plays an important role in the work that you do.
Okay. So once again, thank you so much, Sachin, for giving me this opportunity. Look, I joined the Indian Foreign Services in 1995, mid-90s. And if you recall that, like in 80s, the collapse of Berlin Wall, and then, of course, breakup of Soviet Union in 1991, December 1991. So that actually got me interested into, this global affairs, because, there was a lot of discussion about, now this bipolar world turning into like a unipolar world, and then, will it, then become eventually a multipolar world, etc. Then, we had at that time a government led by the then Prime Minister, Sri Narasimha Rao ji. Then he announced, India's lookist policy. We became member of ASEAN. We became like a sectoral dialogue partner of ASEAN. So many things were happening, at that time, globally. So that actually got me interested, into foreign service. And the second part, about the leadership. Look, I think leadership, as is demonstrated by the leadership by Honorable Prime Minister, that how a nation can feel confident, both within India and outside India. So it's like a demonstration. But when we work in the missions, and especially for the ambassadors, when we head any mission, it's also important to have the leadership qualities. They could be natural, they could be acquired. I would like to focus on two aspects of leadership. Once that when you are working in some place, although you are representative of Government of India, so there is a broader framework. But at the same times, the geographical location and the politics around it. So it's a quite nuanced thing. So you have to develop that framework in your mind. And once you have that frame, then it's very easy to lead. The mission. Like, before coming here, I was India's ambassador to Kyrgyzstan, so it's part of Central Asia. So how are like India's relationship with Central Asia? What is the strategic importance? So you have to have that, framework in mind, before you actually start performing, or on the job also. So similarly here, so there's huge politics around Indo-Pacific, in this region, and ASEAN is of course central to Indo-Pacific. So you have to have that framework. And then secondly, it's very important, when you have a leadership, you are leading a team, that team building, that every member, how efficiently and effectively contributes, to your objectives, your, achieving your goals. That's very important. I always tell, my team here that look, if there is like, some table of let's say 60 kilograms. Now individually one can't lift it, but three of us, we can shift n number of such tables.
Great example.
Yeah, that's one thing. And secondly, because I mean you have to fulfill the policies, implement the policies of Government of India and achieve those objectives. So work is done. But like what is done is important, but how do you do that is also important. So therefore, the interpersonal relationship within the team members are extremely important. So I give a lot of importance to these aspects. Yeah.
So actually, Ambassador has made an important point that leadership plays out at three levels. One is leadership as a nation for India and how it can help ASEAN. Second is the leadership of the nation of India in looking at ASEAN and wanting to engage in a meaningful way. And then there's leadership at the mission in Indonesia itself, which plays an important role in bringing everything together. So very insightful. I like the way you put that. You framed it very well.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to go a little bit more about now the India and ASEAN relationship. And what's important here is to understand what's the significance. But before that, what was the evolution? How did this whole relationship build up?
Okay, excellent. So before going into the details, let us look at how the relationship has actually evolved, So as I mentioned that we became sectoral dialogue partner in 1992. Then, we became full dialogue partner in 95, and in 2002, we became summit level partner. 2012, we became strategic partner, and 2022, we became comprehensive strategic partner. Okay. So that is the journey of India-ASEAN relationship. Now, look, ASEAN is of course this ASEAN-India bilateral relationship. That is only one aspect when it comes to relationship with ASEAN. ASEAN also has, it leads different forums, the most important forum is East Asia Summit process, Okay. And India has been like the founding member of that process, and EAS process will celebrate its 20th anniversary, 2 decades. Then there is another forum which is called as ASEAN Regional Forum. Okay. So we are also its member since mid-90s. Then there is another forum which is called as ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus. Okay. So we are also like a founding member of that particular group, and there is expanded maritime forum. So we also are a member of that. So if you look that it's not only ASEAN, India, and then now we are a very close partner of ASEAN. So comprehensive strategic partner. Apart from that, we actually have been participating in other meetings.
So this brings me to the point about how do we demystify understanding India and ASEAN. And maybe in a few simple words, why is ASEAN important to India?
Right.
And also why is India important to ASEAN?
Right.
If you could touch on some points which will give it a surprise truth element.
Okay. See, okay, so let me first give the surprise element, and then give you the broader framework. Now, when I tell this to my interlocutors or general public, that ASEAN has been India's second largest trading partner for last 2 consecutive financial years. This financial year data is not yet available, but the previous 2. So everyone gets surprised that really, So our trade with ASEAN has been in the range of 10 to 12% of India's global trade, and that has been quite consistent.
Significant.
And another surprise element, it's mainly because of Singapore. I mean, I accept that, but Singapore is also one of the important members of ASEAN. So cumulative foreign direct investment into India, so it's almost around 22% of India's total cumulative FDI. It comes from ASEAN. Mainly because of Singapore. And similarly, so we have around $156 billion investment coming into India, and similarly outbound investment. So another 20% of India's outbound investment comes to ASEAN. Singapore plays a very important role. So these are surprise elements. But now let me come to the broader framework. See, India has a 1700 kilometers long border with Myanmar. It also has maritime boundary with a number of ASEAN member states, including Indonesia. What does that tell? That tells that basically we are neighboring countries. So in the first year itself, in 2014, qualitative shifted our relationship with ASEAN. So from look-east policy, we have now act-east policy. In fact, last year, so year 2024, it witnessed the 10th anniversary. So we started celebrating, a decade of India's act-east policy. So there are other aspects also, if you look at tourism, so India's, 16 to 18% of outbound tourists, they come to ASEAN member states. Singapore and Thailand, they have been among the top 5 most favored touristic destinations by Indians, All these are surprise facts, for many of your audiences also,
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Here is the thing, right? So the economies of India and ASEAN are very intertwined.
That's right.
And if you look at how ASEAN is comprised of so many different nations, there is a relationship that goes from India into the whole region. And I believe that goes down, of thousands of years, not
That's
just
right.
recent past.
That's right. That's right. I think you have mentioned two very important things about these economies and also the civilizational past. Let me touch upon
Sure.
briefly on that. On economy, we have one pan-ASEAN agreement which is called as ASEAN-India Trade in Goods, and it is in existence for more than a decade.
Yeah.
And we want to make it contemporary, so therefore the review is underway, and then we have other two agreements. They are also pan-ASEAN, like ASEAN India Trade in Services and ASEAN India Investment, bilateral investment agreement. So this mission actually, it looks after these three agreements. And you mentioned, one very interesting thing about, the civilizational connect.
Yeah.
The civilizational connect, between India and ASEAN is so deep that you see, the reflection everywhere, whether it is monuments, whether it is, religious aspects, whether it is language, food habits, clothing, etc. But it has, a natural advantage that, we understand each other very well, so because ASEAN always say there is ASEAN way. In fact, when we look at it, it sounds more like Asian way,
Asian way.
and therefore, like whenever we receive some first draft from ASEAN for negotiation, I think India is the first one, to agree to most of the elements which are mentioned, in the draft. Yeah.
So some interesting points there, and also the fact that the culture is so intertwined as well. And I think this brings about an interesting idea of what is the ASEAN centrality about. So some views from you on that.
Okay, look, ASEAN, it is like a very important group in the region since 1967. It came into existence. Initially there were 5 founding members. Then now it's a group of 10 members, and Timor-Leste is likely to join, in the near future, etc. So this has been, one of the most important groups in the, rather the most important group in the region. And we firmly believe that its centrality in the region, larger Indo-Pacific region, is very important. Now, when you say that, India is committed to centrality of ASEAN, so, this is not only lip service. So what do we mean by that? See, it has different aspects. First of all, when you have some policies, so your policy orientation, how much importance do you give? So we have a larger, Indo-Pacific Oceans initiative, but we always have kept, ASEAN at its heart. I have mentioned about, India's Act East policy. So, our leadership, Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, they always mention that, even in, within the framework of Act East policy, ASEAN is at its center. Now, how do you demonstrate? So, these are your policy initiatives. So, if you look at the level of our participation, so Prime Minister himself, he has, participated in 11 ASEAN-India summits, so that's an indication. You would recall that in September 2023, that when India was, president of G20 and hosting, G20 summit on 9th September, we had East Asia Summit meeting on 7th of September. And Honorable Prime Minister has to receive, guests from 7th September onward. Still, he made it a point to come to Jakarta, participate, and go back. So he has travelled more hours than being in Jakarta, just to be, just to participate. So that shows the kind of importance our leadership, gives to this. And the parameters which I have spoken, then that gets, translated, like in trade, investment, tourism, and then there is, then we have this land border. In fact, we have very ambitious projects, but because of the political situation in Myanmar, they are not really taking off. One is India, Myanmar, Thailand highway, and then its eastward expansion, as well as we also wanted to have a grid connectivity, but we are looking forward to stabilizing of political situation in Myanmar. And this also one of the reflection that how we the way we respect ASEAN's approach to the regional things. Like ASEAN has like a 5-point consensus on Myanmar, and India has right from its beginning, since 21, India has been supportive of the 5-point consensus of ASEAN.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, understanding the bigger picture is always important, but then if you come down to what's happening within ASEAN, and then you look at some of the surprise truths that are around you, you'll realize that the Indian mission here has a role to play in many of them. So, I want to talk a little bit about, what are the activities of the mission here, and what are the different programs that you have been championing?
Okay, that's a good question, Sachin, because see, one thing is, we have this, trade, tourism, investment happening, etc. But, you have mentioned, we have this civilizational connect. Now, it is also responsibility of us that, we bring the youth of, both ASEAN and India together and transmit to them our cultural heritage and how we are growing, the technological advancement, etc. So, with that in mind, and basically of sharing of our capacities and information, etc. So, with that in mind, we have actually 4 funds, for which 3 of which ASEAN Secretariat acts as a repository. One is General ASEAN India Fund, then we have another is ASEAN India Green Fund, and then just a year back we launched ASEAN India Fund for Digital Future. So ASEAN Secretariat acts as a repository for that, and then we have one fund which is held back in India, that is called as ASEAN India Fund in Science and Technology. So with these funds, then we run a lot of activities, and if your audience
give us some
they are interested, then I can mention a few of them.
Sure, please.
So, see, in culture, I would like to mention, and this people-to-people contact, I would like to mention 3 main activities. One is we hold ASEAN India Artist Camp, then ASEAN India Music Festival, and more importantly, ASEAN India Youth Summit. So we get 7 to 10 youth from each ASEAN member state. They go to India, around 60-70 youth from India, they participate, and there's a lot of discussion, etc., conversation which happens.
Is that held every year?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
So 5th session is going to happen July this month. So shortly we will circulate the information among ASEAN member states, but also on on technical things. I would like to name at least 2 projects. One is we do startup festival. So generally people have idea what is a startup festival.
Correct.
But let me mention one project which we do along with ASEAN Economic Forum, which is called as Scale Hub Festival. Now this Scale Hub we started from last year. So what happens that in startup festival, so basically startups come together, they participate actually in the ongoing fair, etc., and then there are visitors, and some of them definitely get some orders, etc., but that's over. It's basically event based. But Scale Hub, what we have done is that it's after that event, like startup festival, they do pitching, etc. So it's a long term project. It goes for 1 year, and there's a lot of mentoring happens. They are brought on a platform, those entrepreneurs, and they are put in touch with those who require those technologies, for scaling it up, and therefore the name comes, Scale Hub. So that is one of the important initiatives which we have taken. Yeah.
But apart from that, on a day-to-day basis, you have a lot of actually other activities which keeps the whole relationship going.
Yeah.
Could you mention a few things that actually happen on a more regular basis?
See, look, for ASEAN India, so within ASEAN India framework, we have number of bilateral meetings. Like I have mentioned about the summit. We have every year 2 summits: ASEAN India Summit, East Asia Summit process. So East Asia Summit. Then we have foreign ministers meeting. So again ASEAN India foreign ministers, East Asia Summit foreign ministers meeting. Then ASEAN Regional Forum foreign ministers meeting. Then we have defense ministers meeting. Similarly, commerce minister meeting, digital ministers meeting, tourism ministers meeting, so on and so forth. So the mission participates in the preparation of those meetings. And then I have mentioned a few projects, but like in last 4 years, coinciding with my stay, we would have done more than 50 projects. So we are
quite impressive,
continuously busy. And then some of the projects are very interesting. For example, in cancer care, in India, like we have one national cancer grid. So we share information, we do video demonstration. There are more than 100 hospitals on that grid. And then we are inviting ASEAN hospitals to join that. It's all like free of cost. So just for capacity building. So like that. So it's there are very useful activities which we conduct. So that keeps us busy.
Well, it is a busy mission, and I'm very happy to see.
See
the amount of interaction that's going on.
That's right. That's right. I have the privilege of participating in 8 summits, like 4 ASEAN India summits and 4 East Asia summits and numerous ministerial meetings and participate in the preparation of those meetings, etc. So that and also as India's ambassador to ASEAN, so I also get to travel number of ASEAN member states for the meeting, etc. So that also keeps us busy.
And keeps you well connected to the region, because every country is so different and unique.
So now this year Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia is the ASEAN chair. So like next week I'll be traveling to Malaysia to participate in one of the meetings.
So I'd like to understanding ASEAN has been a very good discussion as of now. Understanding a little bit about Quad.
Okay. So see what let me also mention one thing. See, first of all, that India's commitment to ASEAN centrality, it is very solid. That we really value our relationship with ASEAN. So we have no intention of diluting the importance of ASEAN and its centrality at all. I am mentioning this because like in the context of Quad, there are efforts by some countries to say that look, this regional groupings, they call it as minilaterals, they undermine the centrality of ASEAN, but we don't agree to that. In fact, ASEAN itself, it is habitual to work in small regional groupings also. I can give you example. We have this Mekong Ganga initiative. So we have this Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand. They are part of that. BIMSTEC, like Thailand is a party to BIMSTEC. They are rather chair of that organization this year. Then also now BRICS, Indonesia has joined recently. So ASEAN is actually, there are overlapping membership. Now look, that in Quad, USA, Australia, Japan, apart from India, all 4 of us are important dialogue partners and part of EAS process, East Asia Summit process. So we don't have any intention to dilute the ASEAN centrality. Now, what does ASEAN do? The genesis of Quad is in tsunami of 2004.
Correct.
So it's basically coordination of activities when it comes to disaster, and that aspect has continued. In fact, the recent examples are this Yagi typhoon in Vietnam and earthquake in Myanmar. So again, Quad countries, Quad partners, they came together and have coordinated activity to mobilizing support, to Myanmar. So that's how we work. And then Quad is like a forum for global good. It's for public good. And by the way, Quad has also offered STEM scholarship to Southeast Asian countries. So STEM, as you know, this science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Those scholarship, and we got very good response. From ASEAN member states. So basically, ASEAN holds central position in the vision of Quad, and the positive agenda of Quad complements, the ASEAN mechanisms.
So that's very fascinating. You could see some of the surprise truths that have come up about ASEAN and India's role in it has also revealed many of the other things which I'm sure many of the audiences may not be aware. There's a very strong framework putting together this cooperation between nations, and missions like the Indian mission are part of the structure that makes things happen. And many of the benefits that you're going to be seeing over the next few years is actually a part of the hard work that's being done by the mission here.
Thank you so much for giving us so much credit. I would like to mention, one last point about this larger framework. Now see, this Indo-Pacific is like one of the most important regions, globally. It's both, like economically, it is becoming very strong.
Yes.
And so we have, India has Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, and I'm very happy to share with you that it has 7 pillars. So 3 countries from ASEAN member states, they have agreed to take lead, on the different aspects of IPOI. So even in the broader framework, we collaborate.
Since we are on the surprise truth, there is another surprise truth which you may not know about Ambassador Jayant Khobragade. He is an accomplished painter, and in fact a popular painter. His art has been appreciated in many countries, especially in Indonesia and the ASEAN region. And I would like to delve a little bit about understanding that aspect of Ambassador Jayant, because there is always an intersection between art and the work that you do. So diplomacy and art, Ambassador Jayant, I'd like to get your views on how has this whole aspect of your hobbies now affected or impacted, I would say, your work, and vice versa.
So Sachin, thank you so much for asking me about my this this side of life, asking me question about this side of life, because it's very close to my heart.
Sure.
And when I was in Madrid long back, I said that diplomacy is my profession, music is passion, and painting is just way of life. So
Yeah.
I look at this painting and art is just as a part of daily routine and part of life. And now culture is a very important aspect of diplomacy. In
Yes.
fact, in most of the missions we have cultural wing, we have Indian Council for Cultural Relations back home, etc. So since culture comes naturally to me, to approach to people, to get to know more people. So it helps in many ways. And then like when you are doing art, you are doing painting, you are also perceiving things all the time. So through your perception you also develop understanding about wherever you are. So that also helps. So in that sense, I think that it has been very complementary. So there has been no contradiction between being a diplomat and practicing painting.
Yeah. But surely there would have been a different impact to the way you pursue art being in ASEAN compared to when you were in other countries. Can you tell us a little bit about how maybe work has inspired art and art has inspired work? Some examples perhaps?
Okay, so that's a very interesting and challenging question. Look, I am not a trained painter.
Yes.
So I have whatever I do is only by observation. So wherever I go, my first thing is that to go to museums and see art, etc. Like when I was in Spain, for example, I saw a lot of like impressionist painters, etc., and cubism. So it has impacted, my style in some way, like that. But when I came to ASEAN, and then I started like visiting places and saw the monumental works, at Angkor Wat and Borobudur, and a lot of places in Laos, and temples in Thailand, etc. They have really impacted my thinking and my work. So my latest work, they are focusing more on the Indian civilization. In fact, which has always been like in my heart and my soul. Because we come from the great country, called as India. But then it got like I got a stimulus, and so I have done a lot of paintings on like I'm doing something on Mahabharata and Ramayana, and that way.
That's very interesting, and I'm sure that I've seen some of your work, of
Thank
course,
you.
and I've seen the influences of how you bring that ASEAN element into it, which is actually not so easy because ASEAN is so diverse. And how do you capture the diversity of ASEAN into the connect with India? And that's an art by itself. So some thoughts on that, perhaps.
See, I personally see a lot of harmony, in the expression in different ASEAN member states, So whether it is Vietnam or whether it is Cambodia, so the way the things are expressed, they are inspired by religions, the artworks. I see a lot of harmony, So it's and also you can associate it with the things which you see at Ajanta, Ellora, or in other temples in India. So you can relate, So it's not difficult. So you can like bring all those elements together.
So relate means actually influence, and this is something that I think the surprise truth here is there's art in our lives in so many different ways, which is impacting what we do, how we think, how we behave with each other, and there is a surprise truth in what you can do with it. The power of art could actually play an important role. So I want to ask you, Ambassador, that if you were given a free hand and you were to develop this entire usage of art as a connector between the nations, and you could say it in other words, art diplomacy, right? What would you do, or what do you advise people should take on in the next 5 to 10 years, which you will really help bring this whole thing together?
So now art is, of course, is a very vast area. I mean, painting is just one aspect.
True.
It is music, it is theater, it is textile, it is cuisine, it's everything. So okay, let me then briefly answer it. See, the appreciation of each other's culture, helps bringing people closer to each other.
That's right.
That's very important thing. Sometimes elements are dormant, but they get invoked. That the similarities, in the culture and civilizational aspects. So just let me give one example. Like when I was in Kyrgyzstan, with the help of Kyrgyz National Drama Theatre, we in fact staged a play on Mahabharata in Kyrgyz language. And it was like a super hit theatrical performance, and before my departure I already had put into pipeline, and I think most of the things were done for a theatrical show on Ramayana. I have mentioned about music festival, like we get artists from 10 ASEAN member states, like groups, and then 5-6 Indian groups, they perform together, and in fact, like this time what we did, that they not only performed in India, they went to Bangkok, but like this time they were not performing like separate groups. So artists from different countries came together and formed multinational groups, international groups, and performed in Bangkok.
Yeah.
So similarly we do artist camp, so
Yes.
recent artist camp happened in Shillong, and there also we did a collaborative work, so there's a
Yes.
lot of interaction. So that helps in understanding the cultural ethos of each other's societies, and then that brings people together.
Sure.
So culture plays very important
Important
role in bringing people closer.
Yeah.
So a lot of misunderstandings, etc. They are done away with.
Correct. So, to summarize what Ambassador Jayant just said, art unites civilizations,
Yeah.
art unites nations,
Yeah.
and art unites people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a
You have
fact.
put it very rightly. Yeah.
So, the one surprise truth, which is not a surprise, actually is that if people like each other, they work well together.
Yeah.
And I think the key in improving the way the world is functioning today lies in that. How can we bring people to like each other so that they're able to work together? And I think some of the work that you have done is commendable, because you have
Thank you so much.
played an important role in balancing what is being done from a pure work aspect, as well as balancing all the other things, which includes art. And I like the way you define that art is not just painting, but it's everything. It's all performing arts, visual arts, all of that comes together. So, that aspect, I believe, is now something as homework for us to think about what can we do more so that we are able to bring about this harmony for the regions to work together, like each other, and therefore collaborate in a much bigger and better way.
Yeah.
Would you say that is a fair statement to make?
No, that's very good. But
in terms of opportunity?
Yeah, but I would also like to mention about one particular organization here, Innovat. I worked very closely with them because they were instrumental in organizing my exhibition in Jakarta last year. And the then Minister Santiago, for culture and creative economy, he inaugurated the exhibition. Now this Innovat, they actually inspire a lot of youngsters to do painting, and also they some cultural performances, etc. And so they are helping youngsters to cultivate their artistic attributes. That's a big contribution in promoting art. So such kind of initiatives need to be supported, and I'm sure that they could go on a global scale, because what happened that and then one group from India, Earth Art Society or something, so they are collaborating. I mean, it's all private initiative. It's not like it's beyond ASEAN India framework, but they are like bringing artists from ASEAN, and they are getting together and holding a camp. So these are very good initiatives, and these need to be promoted and supported.
And I think art has to not just be displayed and appreciated, but also exchanged.
That's
so
right.
we need to be able to find ways where art is being sold and purchased and collected and exhibited, and build a healthy ecosystem around it. Same thing goes with performing arts as well.
That's right.
There should be paid performances in various countries, which therefore encourages people to take it up as a hobby, living, and not as a hobby.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, see, exactly, so, my effort has always been like, how do these initiatives, which I mentioned, artist camp, music festival, so how can they work on their own,
Yes.
So if they start like working on their own, nothing like that, without
Absolutely.
any government support, without any ASEAN India fund support, etc. So that's the ambition, and that's how should be the direction.
So there should probably be some seed funding, and that's it. And after that, it should be able to pick up on its own.
Yeah,
Sustainable
I
growth.
mean, see, we have done some loud thinking. For example, this any air company, so for example, they should subsidize the ticket, and artist can give them painting, for example, like that. Even the hotel where they are staying, for example, they can give painting, and hotel can subsidize their stay, etc. So there could be some models, how it could be done, but it has to be done. It has to happen on its own. Then it becomes sustainable.
Absolutely right. Yes.
And it's a win-win situation. It's also like through art we also spread beauty around.
Yes.
So this is like
positive energy.
Yeah, it's a so. It's very important that the place where we work, etc. I give a lot of importance in its beautification.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
I just wanted to mention one thing, Sachin, that when you are into art, let me focus only on painting. Your experience really has to be profound. Because if you are working on a piece of art for 8 months, 9 months together, I worked on a painting of Ramayana for almost 9 months, so that experience has to be really profound. And then only when it is very deep, then that interest in completing the artwork sustains.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you have been working on multiple paintings at a time, right?
Yeah.
Or do you work on one at a time?
No, you're right. See, multiple paintings, because you can't if I'm working on a painting, particular painting, like if I'm working on a painting of a dancer, but at the same time I'm perceiving so many other things, in life, and they also get mature in mind, and then you have to bring them out. So I work, maybe 4 or 5 paintings simultaneously, and technically also it is required, because I mostly do oil painting. So sometimes you have to wait for the oil paints to dry and then give another coat,
So it's multitasking actually.
It's multitasking
You
all the
actually
time,
do it
yeah.
at your work as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
and your hobbies as well. Yeah.
That's right.
So surprise truth about Ambassador, which I would like to let you know, is that he has a very personal connect with this collection. In fact, he calls all his paintings his daughters.
That's right.
And he makes sure that one of the important things is that they must have a good home.
Yeah.
And if they are out on exhibition, he actually waits for them to come home so that they can be back in his house.
That's right.
No, but that's a very interesting way of looking at how an art collection that you have developed so painstakingly over so many years is very personal, and it's something that is part of your life.
That's it.
Yes. So that surprise truth will give you an understanding of how deep art can actually be in somebody's life, and I hope any of you who are artists will also have some similar stories like that, and I hope this is a source of inspiration.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sachin. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about some surprise truths on Ambassador Jayant himself, understanding some of his habits, and probably some of his thinking, and some of his the way he interacts with people and brings it all together. So, Your Excellency, the question I wanted to ask you was, it may be some surprise truths as well, but it's more about understanding how do you make time for everything. I know the job of a diplomat is very challenging, and you are in a role which is extremely busy. You are not dealing with one country, but with the whole multitude of 10 plus 1, and then on top of that you have. I can understand, because art is inspiring your work and vice versa, so you're able to make that connect. But maybe a little bit of some insights from you on that?
See, if I have to, first of all, this is a surprise question. I didn't expect this to be asked. But if I have to answer it in one word, it's discipline. There is some people think that artists are not disciplined, they live chaotic life, etc. I think most of the successful artists they live very disciplined life, and for me, organizing time, I have a routine job, and sometimes it goes beyond office hours, etc. So extract time, from whatever is demand. So it requires, 2 things. One is discipline, so that you have that window of few hours available for you, and then you have to have that energy level, because paintings, any form of art, it takes a lot of your emotional energy, sometimes physical energy also, but emotional energy. So you have to have that emotional energy, and how do you have that? So I am like a very regular practitioner of yoga,
Yes.
So maybe for last 9 years, there has not been a gap of a single day when I did not practice my morning yoga and
Yeah.
meditation. Yeah.
So this is the thing, right? I see that it actually energizes you. It doesn't take energy away from you.
That's right.
And that's something very, I think, commendable, because that's, I think, the mantra or the surprise truth about how do you make sure that all your work is interconnected in such a way that it's giving you more energy rather than taking it away from you. Would that be accurate?
Yes, but it doesn't mean that there is no struggle. So like whether it's office job or painting, so initial period there is always a struggle. But when it starts rolling, it's in autopilot mode. It's like for example, like satellites. They require enormous energy in the beginning to take it to the orbit. Once they are in the orbit, just on the basis of solar, with the help of solar panel, they can orbit, indefinitely, with no energy,
in fact, that's a fantastic example.
Yeah.
And so I would actually like to close the session. First of all, thank you for being here on this show.
So
and some of the surprise truths that you have shared with our audience, I'm sure will, inspire you and, may change your life forever, because it changes from that moment. You cannot unhear it or unsee it, and therefore it should be able to inspire you towards reaching your goals, which you are aiming for. So with that, Ambassador Jayant, I would really like to, thank you, and we would be monitoring the comments from our viewers and readers at this particular page, and hopefully that we'll get a discussion and engagement going. Thank you very much for being here at the Surprise Truth episode with Ambassador Jayant Khobragade, the Indian Ambassador to ASEAN.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.